Welcome to Friendeavor, the podcast, the weekly podcast where we explore the highs and lows of friendship with your hosts, Danielle and Kayla.
As we journey through life, our friendships often evolve and change, ebb and flow, and sometimes even come to an end. Danielle and I are lifelong advocates for the power of friendship, and we are here to guide all of us through the many challenges and joys that come with building and maintaining strong, meaningful connections with those around us.
Join us each week as we deep dive into the intricacies of friendship, from navigating conflicts to fostering new relationships and everything in between. With insightful interviews, personal anecdotes, and expert advice, Friendeavor is the perfect podcast for anyone looking to strengthen their bonds with the people they love.
So, whether you are on the go, taking care of chores, or just settling in, get ready to explore the world of friendship on Friendeavor, the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Friendeavor.
Hey guys, welcome to episode 10.
I cannot believe that it's been 10 episodes already. 10 weeks of Friendeavor, the podcast. I think this is a milestone.
Yeah, absolutely crazy.
This week we are talking about impact of life transitions on friendship, specifically things that kind of move your seasons. So we talked about in the friendship pyramid episode how there's two primary things that will make someone move throughout a tier in your friendship pyramid, and that's time and space. So sometimes space creates and we're going to talk about this. This is actually the first one we're going to talk about, so we might as well get into it. Relocation, moving. Sometimes like when you're a kid, it's your best friend next door and you move away from them, or it could be something much bigger than that, like moving away to college. So out of the two of us, Kayla and I have both relocated at kind of majorly at one point in our lives, but she was much younger than I was. So I will share my experience first about how I moved out to California when I was 16.
Yeah, I'm really interested to hear firsthand how that affected you because, like you said, I was much younger when I moved. I was 3. So it didn't have the same impact on me that it would have had on you at 16. So
yeah,
tell us about that.
It was a big transition, and I genuinely did not realize how big it was in the moment. It was like just, time and space that made me realize how massive a transition that was, going from quite literally one life to another. And not many people get that in such a stark like cutoff, like one ends, one begins. And I'm not saying that like my old life died or something, but it was genuinely like a start of a brand new life. I'm across the country. I'm not just moving to a different state. I'm on the other side of the country, a different type of culture, a different church. And I'm at the most critical, like one of the most critical ages, 16 years old, halfway through my teen years, and I'm starting a new school. I'm halfway through high school. So I move when I'm 16, come to a church that's like, 4 times the size of my old church. I don't really know anybody. There's a couple people I know, but not well enough to like develop deep, relationships where I have that trust and that bond and everything. And I really relied on my family. So I'm just talking about specifically for me. Obviously, we're talking about friendship, but just to give you kind of a foundation to work off of, friendships immediately took a hit. So the people that I had the day before would have like done anything for and would have, I spent every weekend with them and everything, suddenly were no longer there. They were not at my house all the time. They were not even in my texting all the time. They were just gone. And I didn't feel the weight of that, but it was like, oh, they're not, a mile that way. They're not. And so now I went from this point of not having someone at my house every weekend, and I just use that as an example, to having just my family surrounding me. And then I've mentioned on the podcast before how I had another friend who in this exact same weekend lost one of her friends moving away for marriage, and then me for moving away for, my dad got a job. And I can only imagine that kind of impact that had on her to lose her 2 best friends in the same weekend. So moving definitely plays a huge role as a life transition in your friendship. And there's a lot more that we'll go through. But for me, and I know I'm taking a minute here to explain this, so I'm sorry guys that I'm just rambling, but if you have a friend that has moved away, continue to reach out to them, continue to try to connect with them. And if you are the person who has moved away, try to reach out to your friends back wherever you came from and keep that alive. if you're ready to make that switch and you're ready to make that transition and to cause, allow that separation to happen, that's also fine, because sometimes you need to move away from certain friends. But other than that, don't let it just straight up die of
Right.
everything that you had worked for. I at 16 did not have this revelation, and I let many close friendships fizzle out because I just assumed, well, okay, that was fun, whatever. And I still have history with those people, but it's a new era, it's a new time. And so, and I'll get into the process of making friends here, probably in another episode, probably not in this episode, but in a new place and how difficult that can be.
Yeah.
So relocation, basically it boils down to when a friend moves to a different city or even a country. Some people, you move for a country, like we have a friend who moved to be a missionary to Mexico, and we don't see her that
Mhm.
often. Or we have a friend who moved to Nicaragua, or anywhere that they go. It can be challenging to maintain that same level of closeness, and don't beat yourself up if you can't maintain it
Right.
the whole time. Like it's a hard challenge to maintain that level of closeness, but also don't give up. Physical distance can make it harder to spend time together, which can strain the friendship. But thankfully, we live in an era where you have FaceTime and you have games that can be played together from quite literally anywhere in the world. So don't give up just because this life transition of relocation has happened to you.
Right. Yeah. And oftentimes, um, I talked to someone who recently moved to another country, and she was telling me that she loves being on the group text with her friends, and like she loves that they prioritize keeping tabs on her and everything. And she said that that same group text that just makes her so happy and fills her with so much joy can also make her so sad sometimes when they all get together. They
Mm-hmm.
send the pictures and they're like, "Hey, where are you at?" And she's on the group text still.
Yeah.
She said that that makes her so sad. But, you know, it's a balance. And so relocation, it just takes adapting no matter what age you're at.
Absolutely. It is not just a struggle for a teenager, and it's not just a struggle for a kid. Parents and, anytime you're going to move away from what your comfort zone is, you're going to struggle. All right. The second life transition we're going to talk about today is the other side of the Friendeavor podcast hosting team. Kayla, you recently got married and you just had
Yes.
your 1 year anniversary in June. So even though you stayed local, tell us a little bit about how getting married, having a relationship status change from single to engaged to married, affect your friendships, negatively, positively, and how you navigated that.
Yeah. So it, at first, it was both negative and positive. Even though I stayed local, I definitely distanced myself from my friends because I had never really dated someone local. And so I really didn't know how to find the balance between like being with my boyfriend and being with my friends, maybe being with my boyfriend and friends together. And I really had to learn that at first because at first, which I think is pretty normal, I just want to spend all my time with Brett. And then through engagement and wedding planning and everything, that's when a lot of the times my fiance and my friends all came together because we were all wedding planning and whatnot. And then I think I've gotten better about learning to balance it. Now that we're married, we kind of naturally spend more time together. And so I've been a lot more intentional about scheduling those friends dates. And we actually have friends coming over this weekend to have dinner with us. So that'll be fun. And yeah, so I think at first it kind of affected my friendships in a negative way because I just wasn't investing time in my friends. But now I would say it affects it in a positive way. We go out on double dates, and I'm able to like bounce ideas off my husband and get his feedback when there's relationship conflict with my friends. And so I think that affects my friendships in a positive way as well.
Yeah, I could definitely see how there would be challenges and benefits to having a relationship transition for that kind of thing, because you go from, at least as a teenager, when you get into like college and that kind of thing, this is not so much the case, but the teenager life, especially when you get your driver's license, being with your friends almost constantly, it seems like it's like any waking moment you're carving out time to be with them.
Yeah.
When you get into college and stuff, you kind of your time fills up and you get a job and whatever. But going from that to spending time with primarily one person could be just as hard on your friend group as it is on you, or it's not really even hard on you because
Mhm.
you're like, in love or whatever. But
Yeah.
your friend group would miss you, I'm assuming,
Yeah.
because like,
Oh
hey,
yeah.
where's Kayla? Oh, she's with Brett. Well, she's always with Brett. Yeah, because they're developing a relationship.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's
Oh
definitely
no,
normal.
Be Real just went off, but my phone is my camera, so I can't do it.
Oh my
This
gosh.
this is
My phone's my camera too.
we would be so real on the pod right now.
Oh my
Ugh,
word.
sad.
Lame.
Okay, I'm keeping that in, by the way. That's as real as it
Perfect.
gets. Yeah, so I could, like I said, I could see how that would be difficult for your friends too to navigate that. Did you have any
Yeah.
experiences like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, after there was like a pattern forming, my friends and I actually had a sit down heart to heart conversation. We talked about, just investing more time into each other.
Hmm.
So that was great. And I definitely appreciated their transparency there. But they did it in a nice, tactful way.
Good. Yeah, I remember. So I was 13 when one of my friends uh got engaged, and she was not that much older than me. She was like, I mean, old enough to get engaged, but I remember being so thrown for a loop, and I'm 13. Okay, like I'm super young and I have no idea how to handle this. And I'm like, okay, friendship over. She's not going to want to have anything to do with me after she's married. Like, we're done. Goodbye. Nice knowing you. I'll shed some tears, but I just assumed like, okay, life's over now. She's getting married. Um, Granted, she was very young for getting married, but it still was old enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I was like, just crushed. I'm like, oh, well, that's it. But I realized it was not. So I was one of my friends, Brett's friends, both of them were around his age, but he was older, she was a little bit younger. And so I realized that I wasn't just losing a friend, I was like gaining more time with now my friends as a couple. So now they have an apartment, and we used to go to their house and eat. Have you ever had a cinnamon roll, but it's an orange roll? Have you ever had one of those?
No.
Okay, I can't even hear about one of those or taste one without thinking of that apartment, because we used to go over there and eat them by like can after can at
Oh
their
my
house,
word.
because it was like it was an apartment and they were kids and we're just all hanging out, and it was really quite an amazing time, an amazing season to be a
That's so
part of.
sweet.
So my 13-year-old brain could not comprehend like, okay, well, goodbye, nice knowing you, now you're married.
Right.
But in turn, I got something so much more because now we had a place we could all be together, and
Without the
it
parents.
without the parents,
Yeah.
without the parents, yeah. Which is so weird to think, like two people get married, and so now you get to ditch the parents. Like that's such a weird concept, but
Right.
that's what it was. Yeah.
That's awesome.
All right. So we've talked about moving. We've talked about getting married. Number three, we're going to talk about career changes, and how that can affect your friendships. So I am not so much one to make like super deep friendships at work. They are definitely get no higher than my friend tier. And that's again simply proximity, space, and time. The more time you spend with someone, the more space, the closer you are with them physically,
Yeah.
the more the higher on the friendship pyramid they're going to be. Um, so, but if for people who have their identity and their friendships wrapped up in a job, which is totally a thing that happens, things like a new job, promotion, if someone gets promoted out of your department to be like maybe not your boss but someone else's boss, that can definitely affect your friendship with them. Obviously retirement, it all affects friendships. And so like
Yeah.
if you and your friend work at a Dairy Queen together, let's just use that as an example, and you usually work the noon to 8 shift and they get put on the 8 to 4 in the morning shift or something like that. Okay, you're suddenly not spending time with them anymore, even though it was a mutual environment that you kind of had to be forced to be together. You're
Yeah.
probably not going to be as tight as you were before, and that's not necessarily anything that you have done. It's just time and space. It's a life transition. It's a small life transition, getting put on a different shift, but it's still a life transition, and you can't like be like, oh, that's it, I'm just gonna throw it all down the drain. Like if you genuinely want to still be friends with this person, you got to work for it, and
Yeah.
it's not gonna just be magic and rainbows all the time. Any of these changes require effort, but specifically for that example, being in different, like, same place different times is going to be hard. Kayla, in a previous episode we talked about how your job has connected you with people that you've
Mm-hmm.
normally, like, you've heard of but you normally wouldn't have known. So
Right.
how does your relationship now, how is it different than before they joined the company?
I'll definitely say we have this kind of company culture. I work for Adam and Krista King from Daring Married Couple. So um they are they're very mindful about who they hire because our company culture is sweet. It's, I don't know if listener, if you know Krista, you know she is just like the kindest person.
Well, they have
And
met her, remember, because we interviewed her, so they have met her.
oh, that is right. Yeah, that's right. Okay, so if you've listened to previous episodes, you know Krista. um, and yeah, she's just so sweet. Just she just has the best way of going about conflict resolution, everything. So all that to say, they're very mindful about who they hire and they want them to fit the company culture. And so every person that I work with for Daring a Married Couple is just awesome. And I have great relationships with them because they all kind of fit into that culture.
Mm.
I also work at a private school 2 days a week. And so that's in person, and I'm like hands on working with these people. And that's also strengthened my relationships with those people too, and those people's kids. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, definitely status at work changes your relationships with people.
And being in those smaller company environments definitely allows you to develop more camaraderie than in a massive corporate setting. But if
Yeah.
you want that kind of camaraderie, especially if you're a boss, say you work for a large, say you work for like some insurance company like Blue Cross or something, you as a boss have the ability to make your department have camaraderie, and not just silly camaraderie, like stuff that people want to be a part of, which ultimately would make a life transition harder on them. But in the meantime,
Yeah.
you're building friendships with these people. Speaking of jobs and full-time jobs, let's go into parenting. Parenting is pretty much a full-time job. Now, neither Kayla or I,
24/7.
yeah, 24/7, anytime, 365. Neither Kayla or I are parents, but Kayla's got sisters who are parents, and I obviously have eyes so I can see what happens, and I have friends who are parents, so I feel qualified to speak on this from my angle, not from a parent, but from friends, from a friend, from being a friend of people who have become parents.
Yeah.
Becoming a parent can significantly impact a friendship, like going from 100 to 0 quite literally overnight. Like,
Yeah. And
you
not only time, but like preferences too.
absolutely, yeah,
Like,
you might think that the person that you are very close with, you will be their, the godmother or the auntie or whatever, but it is a kind of astounding, honestly, and sometimes hard to navigate, that you realize you're not even a part of that kid's life as much as you thought you'd be. Like, I remember when I found out one of my friends was expecting, and I made the statement, was like, oh my word, I'm gonna go broke buying clothes for this kid, right? Or buying stuff for this kid. And I have never one time, like, I've seen her because we like, I see her often, but I'm not anything to her other than like one of her mom's friends from, like, oh, we see her sometimes.
mm-hmm.
It's so interesting. It's sad,
Yeah.
but it's so interesting because the demands of raising children, especially during the early years, totally limit time and
Mm-hmm.
absolutely decimate energy. And so anything that they would have dedicated to socializing before is gone because it's now filtered to their kids, which is
Yeah.
not wrong, but it's just something that you need to prepare for. And I hope to God that every single person who their friend becomes pregnant, or their family is expecting a child, um, gets to keep that same level of connectivity, and that the parent wants you
Right.
involved in their life. But I have
And it's
now had,
possible.
it is possible, but for me, that has not happened yet. And you go from like being very close to someone to not seeing their kid, and now their kid is 2 years old, like watching them from
Yeah.
afar. So it you're gonna also realize, you need to realize that you have different life experience now. I remember going to a party one time when we first moved here, so two life transitions, the life transition of moving and then moving to a place where all of these people who are like around my parents' age, not as old as them, but closer to them than to us, were had all these little kids. So you've got my
Mm-hmm.
parents who at that time were early 40s, and you had us who were teenagers, and then you had these parents who were like late 30s but had like, you know, 4, 5, 6 year
Toddlers.
olds. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like kids 0 to 9 years old. And so my parents couldn't relate to the other adults because they were had the little kids, and we couldn't relate to the kids because they were kids, but we couldn't relate to the older, like the middle-aged adults, because they had kids. And so we found ourselves in this weird spot where it was hard to make friends with people in these families just because we were all had different life experience going on at that time.
Yeah.
All that to say, don't take it personally when your friends have kids, and if you just something happens. Again, I hope it
Yeah.
doesn't, and I don't want to be a doomsayer, but it could. So just prepare yourself.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's just the amount of time kids take up.
Yeah.
And sometimes there are like postpartum depression, people just wanting to recluse or lack of confidence to go out,
Mm-hmm.
lack of just uh the energy to go out.
Yeah.
So
And like the safety aspect, they might not want anybody around their baby if they were in
mhm.
NICU or something like that. So just don't take it personally. I know it's easy to do, and I found myself in positions where I felt like slighted or whatever, but I actually just saw this thing like 2 days ago that said you go from being very close to someone to not seeing, and then they get pregnant, and then it's like you don't meet their kid for 2 years. Like I feel like that has happened. And so I both feel bad because I feel like I didn't do enough, but I also know that it's like she's at a different stage in her life now. And I can't be
Yeah.
offended by that. That is quite literally the definition of a life transition, is moving into a different stage. So
Yeah.
you can't get bent out of shape when that kind of stuff happens, but you can still try. And if there's no reciprocity on the other side, attribute it to
Yeah.
time, energy. It's just their priorities have shifted, like you said. Moving on to number 5, we're looking at how education is a life transition. You see this more so in like high school. You got friends who, oh, we're never gonna die. We're young. We're amazing. Whatever. We go to homecoming and we do whatever. And then senior year is the most magical and memorable and whatever. And then you split up into 100 different colleges across the country.
Right. Yeah.
Your education, pursuing higher education, especially out of high school, is going to separate you and your group far and wide.
Yeah.
And so you find yourself in a different social circle, and you have to learn how all over again to make friends when you've had the same friends or same connections from theoretically kindergarten to 12th grade. Now you're starting over and you're having to learn and meet new people, which is definitely a life transition, and it's going to be hard to do. I myself did not go to traditional college like right out of high school. I did Hope Corps, and then I did an online associates, and just my journey was a little bit different. But like Kara went to
Yeah.
Berkeley, and she had to meet new people and still navigate, being herself and all that stuff. So education can definitely play a part in, or is definitely a representation of a life transition.
Yeah. And educational commitments may limit the availability of time for socializing with friends, not only the time at school, but it's the time after school, and it's studying, and it's, well, I need to be up early for this and that. It is just all around, it's time consuming
Absolutely.
and mentally consuming.
I mean, think of what just happened to Kara, right? We had this thing planned
Right.
for
Yeah.
months that we're going to do 2 weeks, a week from Saturday. And her professor
Mhm.
last night says, "Oh, I'm
Yeah.
canceling class on Saturday and I'm making it the next Saturday."
Right. And
After
it's like, what do you
she,
do?
yeah, after she, Kara, had taken on the responsibility of getting this into the calendar. We'd been planning it for like 3 months. It's a family tradition, so we do it every year. And then this educational commitment got flipped on its head, and now like she is put in a crosshair. Like now if this was a friend thing and not a family thing, she would just miss out. But since we're family and we're amazing, we just switched it around and rescheduled it and try to make
Yeah.
everyone's schedules work. But it's hard. It's hard. Life transitions, education can definitely limit your availability to be social.
Right.
I mean, we had the same thing. We had a lunch plan for Saturday. We still do, but it was at 11:30, and then it was 12, and then it was 12:30, and then it was 1, and then it was 1:30 because her
Yeah.
class kept getting pushed back farther and farther. And so
Mhm.
you just got to be flexible. You need to be patient with your friends when they're in those situations because they're not always going to be available like they once were.
Right. And you won't always be available when their schedule changes. So it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be a hard adjustment, but
Absolutely.
got to be flexible.
We're not going to spend too much time on number 6 because thankfully neither Kayla or I have a ton of experience with this. I have enough to make me tear up every now and then, but loss and grief, obviously, if you lose a friend, if they pass away, then obviously you have had one of the most major life transitions in your life, or that life can throw at you. But it's not only if you lose a friend, but if you and your friend lose someone together, that can put a strain on the relationship that you had. It can bring you closer together,
Yeah.
and what we lost has given us has bound us together, and given us
Shared
a new
trauma.
shared trauma. Absolutely.
Yeah.
um but on the other side, it could drive you apart. Your responses to grief could make you seek different forms of like support and comfort, and just what was could no longer be. So like, okay, I
Yeah.
can't be with you anymore because that's all I think about is what we lost, and the shared memories that we have are no longer a support to me, but they are nothing but harmful to me.
Yeah.
Again, this is just an example of a life transition. It's not always going to be both. People are not always going to react the same way, but it's just
Right.
something to be aware of if God forbid it were to happen in
Right.
your life.
And grief is really unpredictable, from person to person and from situation to situation. Sometimes if I'm grieving or if I have lost something, someone, like I just want to recluse. And then other times I just want to like throw myself into my friend's arms.
Right.
So it can definitely vary. And that's something that you really can't prepare yourself for until it happens.
Yeah. And if we think about it, not even mutual friend loss, but if your friend lost a loved one, you need to respect the fact that they might not, and we talked about this in quality time, I think, but they might not be as available to spend time with you. And you can't get bent out of
Mm-hmm.
shape about that because they're going through a life transition. So it's not
Yeah.
just friend to friend losing a friend, it's also your friend going through a difficult time of loss and grief. And they themselves have to walk the path of grief, and they might never be the same again. And that is
Right.
another life transition. And you
Yeah.
need to either adapt with them and grow and move in that direction, or at least in the way to be able to support them, or know that the season is closing. But I say
Right.
fight for it. I say I am team fight for it always.
Always. Yeah.
Yeah. Number 7 is financial changes. I threw this one in here because it is important and it is something to be aware of, but you this one gets me grumpy. So before I get ahead of myself, let me just talk about it. So financial changes, uh, like significant change in financial circumstance, we're talking mostly about significant gains in wealth, can influence friendship. Let's talk about loss first, because significant financial loss could mean that people are not as readily available to do things, especially paid activities, as they once were.
Yeah.
Even if it's not a paid activity, that time that they normally would have been able to go hang out with you, they might be now filling that time doing a side hustle, trying to make more
Right.
money to survive. Don't disparage them, don't look down on them
Right.
for having to do that to live. But
And it also bleeds into everything else in life when you don't feel like you're in control
mm-hmm,
of your money or
yeah,
you feel like you're going broke. It really does bleed into your mood,
it's
everything.
panic. It's like panic. It's like a
Yeah.
constant fear, panic setting in like the base of your chest, and it consumes your thoughts. So your friend
Yeah.
might not be as available emotionally or physically or whatever if they're going through this kind of struggle. So that's my 2 cents on the losing financial change, that kind of thing. Now here's my soapbox for financial gain. Thankfully, I've not experienced this, but just the thought of it really ticks me off. So here we go. If you find yourself if you find yourself with significant wealth increase, that does not mean you exchange your friends for a better group. Okay.
Yeah.
This is not a first bank of friendship where you say, okay, I qualify for a higher loan to take out better friends, so I'm gonna whatever. No, this is not a ladder. The friendship pyramid is not a ladder. You are not climbing to get higher.
Right.
It is a time and energy spent and desire to be of time to be with people, and your history with people absolutely matters.
Mm-hmm.
You are not exchanging friends to be better, or to have like, I don't even know what people are looking for. Are they looking for people to do like more expensive things with them, or what? I don't even know. But I told you this is my soapbox. You can take your friends, the friends that you have right now, to that next level with you. That doesn't mean you have to pay for everything for them. That doesn't mean that you have to give them handouts. We're not socialists here at Friendeavor, the podcast.
Yeah.
But you can help them be better, help them
Mm-hmm.
grow their own wealth, that kind of stuff, and just still be yourself. You can be yourself with a nicer car, and you don't have to be like, hey guys, here's my nicer car, haha, you don't have one. Take them to that level with you. Be the
Yeah.
same. Don't make them
Mm-hmm.
feel bad. Be
Right.
yourself, and be what your friend group needs.
Yeah, absolutely. My sister in the same year just got a Tesla and a new house. They bought a new house. And I mean, like the rest of us in the friend group are like not at that level yet. We're all still in apartments and in our little Hondas. And so, but like we have like she's shared those experiences with us.
And
We've
yours
all
are
ridden in
happy
her
for it
Tesla.
too.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah.
that's my
And
next
like
soapbox.
anytime we hang out, like we opt for her house now because it's just so cool. So, and she's like happy to share that with us.
Absolutely. That's what a good friend does, is not only do they have, what they have, they've gained what they've gained, they share it with the people that they love. But my other soapbox is that if you have found yourself in a situation where your friend has, you know, become wealthy, or not even wealthy, just are at a new level financially or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, like being able to buy a house, that's incredible. That's something that's
Yeah,
so difficult to do in California. If you just
so
sit back
difficult.
and cross your arms and be like, why didn't that happen for me? Why do they get this and I get this? And rejoice with them that rejoice. Celebrate
Mm-hmm.
with them. They're not better than you, and you shouldn't act like they deserve less. Right? what
Right.
what have you done to encourage them and to lift them up and to congratulate them and offer to help
Yeah.
and just be happy for them? And like I said, rejoice with them that rejoice.
Yeah.
I don't see blessed people that get mad when other people get blessed. I just don't see that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So a life transition like financial gain or loss should not merit a huge change in your friendship. It is a life transition, but it should not affect your friendships uh negatively
Right. If
either
anything,
way.
it should affect it positively if it's going to affect it.
Mm-hmm. And even in the loss, it should affect it positively, because you should be more willing to lend a helping hand, be
Mm-hmm.
encouraging. And if it's you who's had the loss, maybe you're going through a life lesson of learning to trust, learning to trust
Mm-hmm.
in God, and learning to trust in your relationships, that people are still going to be friends with you even if you are in a difficult season. It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be isolating in gain or in loss. Man, I really felt that one, didn't I?
Yeah, you felt real strongly about that one.
Oh, it makes me mad. It makes me mad. All right, moving on to number 8. This is our last one, and we won't keep you guys too much longer, but I also feel strongly about this one, so
Yeah.
bear with us. Um, Listener, if you are an apostolic, you will know what I'm talking about. And if you're not, first of all, welcome. Everyone is welcome to listen to Friendeavor
Mm-hmm.
the podcast. But this next one, this life transition, is what most of the world and even the religious world would call like self-discovery, or a religious shift.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is something that the secular world would be like finding my true self, finding my truth, or whatever. First of all, there's only one truth. You can't find your own truth. There is one truth. And
Mic drop. Okay.
I would drop my mic, but I would have trouble getting it back to where it needs to go. So for apostolics, what we would call this is backsliding. And I can tell you from personal experience, not as a backslider, but as someone who has watched my friends walk away from God, it is devastating.
Yeah.
It is devastating. And then it's like, to me, it was the same pain as physically losing someone, like loss of life.
Yeah.
For example, I have brought this person up like 3 times, but you know what? It keeps working. The friend that I lost, who died 5 years after I had moved here, she died on a Sunday at like, I don't know, let's say 10 a.m. our time. I go to church practice at 8:30 our time. I go to practice and someone comes in and she's like kind of crying, and I'm like, what's wrong? And she's like, oh, your friend, her daughter, I won't say who, obviously, has decided to no longer call the Rock Church home, and she's left God. And I was like, what? And I was like, I was so sad. I was so burdened by that until 2 hours later when I found out my other friend had died, also a backslider. I was enraged. My grief absolutely overcame me for the loss of my friend, my friend who died. But the rage also filled my heart about someone who had backslidden on the same day as a backslider passed away. I held on to that way too long, first of all, and I have repented several times from then. But
I didn't realize you found out both of those at the same day.
At the
I never knew
same
that.
day, like 2 hours apart.
Wow.
And I have felt, again, I have since repented from this, and I'm not saying this to whatever, I'm saying this as a warning. I had zero compassion on that person who walked away. Did I look like Brett when I was doing that?
So Brett. So Brett.
Oh, what can I say? I mean, he and I have a lot more manners than I think.
Down to like the cadence and the hand movement.
Oh, zero. I felt zero compassion for this person who had walked away from God for like 3 years. And she was gone for like 6 years. 3 years. I did not feel any compassion for her because of the timing in which I found out that she had left God. She had backslidden. Call it a religious shift, call it a cultural shift, call it a self-discovery, whatever you want. She backslid. She walked away from everything she had known. And it just so happened to fall on the same day that a very good friend of mine passed away. And so that life transition of someone leaving God at the same time that a loss had happened was such a huge moment in my life that I had lost 2 friends in one day because I no longer had contact with the person who had backslidden. Like, she was out of my life. She was no longer at my church. I didn't cut her off. She left on her own accord. Thank God she is back now. And we just had a party celebrating her. And I put in her card that I am genuinely so glad she is back in my life, because I completely feel that way. And I don't have animosity toward her or anything like that. It was just the timing of it was so radical for me that the 2 different types of life transitions that happened to me on the same day, I completely let one get me in grief and the other one got me in anger. And so, like I said, call it what you want, religious shift, backsliding. It was a life transition. And so I felt like I had lost 2 friends on that day. One that I felt more compassion for, the one who physically died, than the one who had spiritually died. That's what happened to me. And I can't speak for anyone else, but, and I use air quotes here, religious shift can be absolutely devastating to not just the person who's choosing to leave, but the people they're leaving behind.
Yeah.
It's hard. It's so hard.
Yeah. And oftentimes, I mean, people don't backslide overnight. So,
Right.
I mean, my mom told us that all the time growing up, that it doesn't happen overnight. People don't leave their spouse overnight, you
Mm-hmm.
know? So it doesn't happen overnight. And if you're close enough to that person, you're going to start seeing the signs,
Right.
and you can be a good influence for them and start to like address those signs, or they could be a bad influence on you
Mm-hmm.
if you're not prayed up, and if you're not praying for conviction,
Yeah.
then that can start to go downhill really quick.
Spiritually
And
on guard
so,
for yourself.
right, yeah. And I am definitely not a believer in completely cutting someone off once they backslide. I have a few backslidden friends that I'll text them on holidays, and I'll let them know, like, I'm praying for you, love you. But I will not go out of my way to hang out with you several times a week if I feel like it's gonna um, bring me down
Oh, absolutely.
spiritually, and just putting myself in that company
Yeah.
too. Though
I
I feel,
would.
though I personally feel I'm not in a place to be influenced,
Mm-hmm.
just putting yourself in that environment and around that spirit, because it's a backslidden spirit is a different spirit than someone who's simply out in the world, has never been
Right.
a believer.
Yeah. That is so true. I think of, while you're speaking, it came to mind, like someone who is drowning, or someone who's like caught in a riptide. The riptide is
Mm-hmm.
pulling them out and further into dangerous waters. And you going out there to try to drag them out could could you could get just as easily caught in that riptide and drug out
Yeah.
right alongside them. You
Oh
pray
yeah.
for them and you
Absolutely.
love them, and here's the most important part: you get someone who's qualified to swim in riptides to get people out. A pastor, a
Mm-hmm.
youth pastor, a mentor, a guardian, someone who can navigate those waters skillfully. You could be the person who flags down the lifeguard and says, hey, someone is caught in this riptide, please help them,
Yeah.
please help them, because I know within myself that I'm not strong enough to swim against that tide. I
Right.
know that if I go too far to try to get them, I will be sucked out to sea alongside them.
Mm-hmm.
So while they're quote unquote finding their truth or having their religious shift or whatever, I need to be guarding my own spirit and my own heart. I will love them, I will pray for them. This is not the attitude I had in that situation before. It was not a I will love them, I will pray for them. Obviously, it's a different kind of circumstance. Not every single person who backslides is going to backslide on the same day that, one of your friends dies, but you can still love them without supporting them.
Yeah.
And if you
For
do support
sure.
them, the support that you give them is not, hey, I am legitimizing your lifestyle. It's, hey, here's some tools to help you get back to where you need to be.
Yeah.
Here's your life raft. Here's your lifeguard. Come back to shore where it's safe.
Right. This might not be popular, but this is something I have just pondered over the years. Is, yes, loving them is not condoning their lifestyle. And something that's always just been so mind-boggling to me is, someone backslides, and they may choose to post questionable things on their Instagram, and their friends that are still in church are commenting, "That's such a slay. Love it." It's like, do you?
Blows my mind.
I'm
It
like,
blows
I
my mind what people will like on
don't
Instagram
understand.
as if no one will see it or comment. Like that's even
Right.
more public.
Or comment. Yeah.
I'm like, why
Yeah.
would you show them? Because to like something, quite literally on Instagram, to like something is to not only show them support, but it's also
Mm-hmm.
to save a record of it in your likes so that if you
Yeah.
want to find it again, you can. Why would you
Yeah.
need that? To both ways. Why would you need that to see that again? And why would you show them the support that it is? If
Right.
that is, and this is not just for religious things. This is not just for standards or whatever. It's also for like, if you see someone who, you have a friend who just went and started playing soccer, okay, and they post a tutorial of how to kick a soccer ball, would you
Mm-hmm.
like it to save it? No, because it's like, that's not your thing.
Yeah.
and it's not a great analogy because you could still just be, liking to support them, but
Yeah.
it's not your world, right? Or what if your person, um it's just have wisdom. It's like, it's not even, you don't even have to draw up a bunch of different scenarios. Have wisdom in what you're liking, like genuinely enjoying liking, and saving
Yeah.
for yourself, and what kind of message is that showing for the other
Yeah.
people.
And that's not only with people you know. I mean, when you like something, you're telling the algorithm, show me more of this.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
when you're
That's such a great
scrolling through
point.
your For You page and you're liking very questionable things that you really shouldn't be lingering on, it's okay if you come across something that you didn't mean to come across. But if you linger on something, you're
Mm-hmm.
telling the algorithm, show me more. And when you like it, you're like doubly telling them, show me
Yeah.
more.
Speaking of
So
liking, someone went and spammed Friendeavor and dropped like 100 likes on our account.
I did. Friendeavor just got flooded with about 100 likes.
We need to get that boost. So, listener, go and spam our account with likes. I want to see who is listening to this.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that wraps up our conversation about life transitions. It's important to note that these transitions don't always result in finality, like the end of a friendship. You can still communicate. You can still have understanding, adaptability, whether your friend is a parent, whether your friend has gone off to college. The only things that we've really talked about that are kind of finality, and it's obviously up to you, and using wisdom, are cultural, religious shifts, and self-discovery, and obviously the actual loss and grief. But you just got to be adaptable. You got to maintain and nurture friendships during times of change. Sometimes friendships are going to naturally evolve. Just because you are a childhood friend, you will not necessarily be an adult friend. If we didn't even get into those kind of like transitions about age, but just having wisdom and understanding your own desire, like, oh man, so and so is having a kid, but I still want to be their friend. So I'm going to show support and be like, hey, what can I do for you? How can I help you? How can I love you? Whatever. And hopefully they'll have the same mutual kind of love for you and want you to be a part of it. But even if their priority has shifted, they can still hold value in your life, and you can still hold value in theirs. Just
Yeah.
the impact of life transitions ultimately depends on the individuals involved and whether you allow that to make you stronger or tear you down. If you're willing to navigate these interesting new paths your life has taken. Thank you so much for listening this week to Friendeavor the podcast. We are always thrilled to see that you've stopped by, and if you would be so kind as to leave us a review and drop us
Yes.
a 5-star rating, because we are 5 stars. Kayla's 2.5 stars. I'm 2.5 stars. You put them together, you get 5 stars. So if there was a 10-star option, you could still only do 5 because we are each 2.5. But you know what? This is only going to get better and better as we go and keep going. Episode 10. What do we think? Episode 10.
I know. I know. And it's absolutely crazy. I can't believe we recorded 10 of these.
I know that I'm
So
really
crazy.
excited. This first
Yeah.
season, I'm really excited to see what comes next. And here we
Yes.
go. Let's do this. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Friendeavor the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's content, leave a review and share with a friend. You can find the show notes on our website, www.friendeavor.net, and in the description of this episode.
Friendship is a journey. It's an endeavor. We'll see you next time on Friendeavor.